So we were talking about evidence to corroborate some of the stories, the ancient stories, um, Genesis, the Anunnaki stories, the Enuma Elish, the story of Gilgamesh, Epic of Gilgamesh. Um, so all this research, you just get more and more entangled into things, and sometimes it does take you a little while to work things out. And evidence keeps popping up all over the place. Now, like I mentioned, there was the ancient aliens. It was really interesting, some of the stories. They talked about all these ancient sites with these interesting building techniques and interesting designs in these blocks and the way these blocks were cut, and some of the holes that were in, like if you're in construction, you know what a core drill is. We use this tube that is tipped with diamonds to cut through concrete so that we can get pipes through there or whatever. Some of the things are really weird, and like these mainstream people will try to explain things away in a way so that you are left to believe that this happened like just recently. Right? That's only a couple thousand years old. That's only 4,000 years old. It's only 6,000 years old. The problem is geology has a way of figuring out when stuff happened. And you can't count on just one method. There's people who dig up the dirt and they go through the layers and they can see the layers when they're digging a hole. They scrape it away and they can see the layers and they can kind of guess when each layer happened. And there's certain things that happen and they know from evidence and stories and history. Like certain volcanoes will go off and in a certain area, and when they're doing archaeological digs, they know when that happened. There's records of it. So when they hit that point, it's kind of a good point in knowing where that happened. Also, they have the ice cores in Antarctica. They can see a lot with that too. Like if there's black, they know something big happened to the point where there was soot or debris in the air at a certain time. And they can kind of mark on the ice where that is, and then they can kind of see where, the next part is. And then and you have historical records. You have you have the stories too. The thing about the stories is sometimes it's hard to know when they're talking about. The cool thing about the ancients, when they built stuff, such as the pyramids, they did it in a way to tell you. They're saying, hey, look, this is when this happened. So, like the pyramids were built at a certain time, and the Sumerians have the math. They had the math to figure this all out, which is, to me, a little crazy that they just popped up out of nowhere, and they've got, Pythagorean's theorem. They know what pi is. They already know about the wobble of the earth. They've got this all figured out. What? So they know about the wobble of the earth, and they know about the astrological signs, the 12 astrological signs, and each astrological sign in the sky has an era. So, like, I think it changes about every 2,000 years, maybe a little over 2,000 years for each era. So, when they built the Sphinx, they faced it east towards the rising sun, and if I remember correctly, they faced everything towards a certain place. It wasn't always east. It depended on where it was at, and it would point towards, I think, like the home area. And they built this in the time of Leo. Well, you can look up when, you can figure it out when the pyramids were built, kind of. And Leo too, or the Sphinx. And they did this all over. You can see this in Göbekli Tepe. You can see this all over. They put certain astrological signs in there to tell you what era this happened. The problem is if the human beings have been around for hundreds of thousands of years, and this earth has been around for millions of years, we can only know that it happened here, or here within this certain amount of time. So like almost every 26,000 years, the Earth's wobble comes all the way around and starts over. And a lot of people are like, well, you remember the 2012 thing? They thought the Mayans were, predicting the end of the Earth. No, it's just the end of a cycle. And the Earth goes through cycles. So apparently 2012 we're starting a new cycle. They're supposedly. But who knows when they started their calendar. It's like I said about the 7 days of the week. Who knows when the seventh day was? Nobody really knows. Seventh day could have been Friday. It could have been Wednesday. Just depends on when they started their work. Or if you want to go by the Bible, Genesis, what day did God start? Was it a Monday? Was it a Sunday? You don't know. And see, I'm just trying to reason things out. And these are things I've thought about. Anyway. So, where was I? Yeah. So, like almost every 26,000 years, this wobble comes around and restarts. So, from whatever point you started, 25,000, so many hundred years, this wobble takes place. And the math that they showed to figure this out was crazy. The Sumerians, how did the Sumerians know the exact circumference of the Earth? How did they know how many miles it was? How did, there's so many things that a lot of people are saying, well, it's a coincidence. There's no coincidences. They built these things on purpose, for a purpose. And it's my belief that they were telling us something. And they were telling us when. Now, a lot of people were saying, okay, that's fine. We'll go back to when, these stars lined up. And they're like, okay, see, it's only, 12,000 years or whatever. Anyways, whatever they did. The problem is the Sphinx is shown that the evidence, and not just the Sphinx, but everything, all the big pyramids, all the gigantic stones that are there, they're showing a massive amount of erosion. And these are gigantic blocks. And they've patched up and fixed up the Sphinx and some other stuff, but the other buildings, like, I don't know, for some reason they decided they weren't gonna fix them up. Some of them blocks are almost like gone. So the other thing is they're trying to say that these pharaohs built these pyramids, which nobody anymore believes. Everybody who's been there that knows anything about science and geology and how things work with stones, these gigantic stones are just like got a huge amount of weathering on them. Some of them are in such bad shape that the other blocks are just falling off of them. And then you got these smaller pyramids, and this is my theory, that the pharaohs tried to copy the big pyramids, and they were never there before. They moved in and inherited this stuff, and they were just amazed by the architecture, and they moved in and they tried copying. Well, the evidence is that there's smaller pyramids there. They're nowhere near, I mean, they're tiny compared to the Great Pyramids. And some of them are similar, but they're like little blocks that you could imagine human beings being able to, roll on rollers and get them into place and put them where they need to be. And so they built these smaller pyramids. These smaller pyramids have almost no erosion on them. So the small pyramids were not there when the big pyramids were. And the big pyramids have been there for a long, long time. Here's my thing, is like, okay, so they can't be 10,000 years old. They can't be 6,000 years old. These things have to be closer to 100,000 years old. Definitely over 50,000 years old. That screws up everything. And they're fighting it tooth and nail. The historians are fighting it. The Egyptologists are fighting it. And you can't argue with the evidence. That's gaslighting. Oh, you see this? No, that's not what you see. That's not what you see. No way. And they get really mad. And if you say anything against their narrative, they will come out after you. Robert Schoch found out the hard way. He's like, they said he has no credentials. He is not a geologist. He's not this. He's not that. He's nobody. This guy is a professor at, I think it's Boston College. And he's definitely got credentials. He's got PhDs in several things. It was just a slanderous attack to try and make everybody believe that he's nobody and that his evidence has no merit. Well, anybody who understands rain and erosion and anything like that has got to know that it's garbage. And here's the other thing, is there's no flood, there's no evidence of a flood on these pyramids either. So they were like done after the flood. So the flood didn't happen 6,000 years ago. It happened over 50,000 years ago. And I mean, now you guys are kind of seeing where I'm at. I'm like, okay, show me the evidence. I want evidence. And I believed a lot of the things that I was told for a long time. But if you dig and dig and dig and dig, you will find the truth and the answers that you want. Unfortunately, I don't have the money or the means to go to all these sites and verify all of it, but there are a lot of people that do. And the stories that they're telling is way different than what the original narrative was, the original history, original stories. With that, I love you and see you in the next one.